Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode If You Could Hide to Kolob podcast. My name's Daniel. This is my brother Clive.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Yes, great to be here today for another wonderful lesson. Very history-based, this lesson. Talking, well, next week, very, very important lesson about Liberty Jail, which we're excited about. We have a surprise guest for everyone. But, yeah, I just wanted to give the quote, Daniel, if that's all right with you. I'll give the quote in... So, in honor of President Nelson, he's just recently passed. I wanted to find a quote for him, and I found one that actually matches really perfectly up with this "Come Follow Me" lesson today. And it's about I guess opposition and how we can face that. I'll just read it. So it's from April 2023. It says, "The Savior's message is clear. His true disciples build, lift, encourage, persuade, and inspire. No matter how difficult the situation, true disciples of Jesus Christ are peacemakers. As disciples of Jesus Christ, we are to be examples of how to interact with others, especially when we have differences of opinion. One of the easiest ways to identify a true follower of Jesus Christ is how compassionately that person treats other people."
Clive, one thing I wanted to take you through very quickly is a map of the area. And I say that because here in Australia, very few people would be aware of Missouri. Well, we would know where Missouri is, but in terms of how the counties are broken up and the new county that's being created. So if you don't mind, I'm going to quickly just show that. Here is two maps. This is really what I wanted to show you. And this John Hamer's done a wonderful job of this article, which I found on a BYU site. So what you'll notice here is this section, this big rectangle section here. This is that prior to the church getting Caldwell County. So essentially it was a really unestablished area. And so the Missouri legislator, they said, we're going to take this really unused land and we're going to give you your own reserve. And that's what that is here. So by this stage, the Saints have been driven out of Jackson County. They went to County, you'll recall. They've been driven out of Clay County, and now they make their way up here. And so today we're going to talk about Adam-ondi-Ahman, and Joseph is walking far west becomes the capital, which is here, and Joseph is walking north, and he gets to this point here on Lyman White's fires that the Lord has said that this place here, previously called Spring Hill, is now called Adam-ondi-Ahman. So this is a really large area. And what was happening is the government was saying, if you will take this land, this unorganized land, all this, and certainly parts of, they went into Coral County. So, they went to county, but with the unorganized land, which is more this area here that I was saying, what they would do is the government said, you can have 60 acres at $1.20 an acre, and you can pay us later as long as you commit to building up the land and making the land useful. And that's what they would do. So part of the problem that we're going to talk about over this next year is when the Saints get to this area, I'll rub all this out, but when the Saints finally get to Caldwell, they say, okay, well, for $1.20 an acre, we're going to also start making up this land. And then more and more Saints moved in.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good visual. We can see what it all means. Like I said, a lot of people around the world don't really know exactly where it is. Spring Hill, Adam-ondi-Ahman, as you said, like really, really important history there, which it talks about in 116. So, yeah, good to know, and yeah, hopefully it makes sense as we talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Clive, so we're doing 115 to 120. I've got a couple of things. The church's name is changed. A couple of verses here, verse 3 and 4. And also unto my faithful servants who are of the high council of my church in Zion. For this it shall be called, and unto all the elders and the people of my church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints scattered abroad in all the world. For thus shall my church be called in the last days, even the church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So the church is renamed, and we go through no further changes except for punctuation changes. I think in the 90s, the missionary's badge font size change to it, to making the name Jesus Christ the largest in the font of our badges, of the missionary badges, which you would be familiar with.
Yeah, it's important, the naming of the church, because, the church has to be named after Jesus Christ. I think we talked about, it might have been last year, where we were talking about the Doctrine and Covenants, that, how confusing it could be for people to say, okay, we worship Christ, but we're going to, the Church of St. Paul or the Church of St. Mary's. Like, it's the Church of Jesus Christ. That's whose church it is. And then the Latter-day Saints part, the Daniel in the Old Testament, he talks about seeing the church in the future, and he calls us the latter days. So he says, I see the church in the latter days I think it says for many, many days. And so we are the latter-day saint that he saw in the future. So we are the church of Jesus Christ of the latter-day saints, that is the latter days that were seen, and we are the saints of those latter days. And so the church name makes complete sense to what it is.
There is also mention at the end of 115, Clive, and also that other places shall be appointed for stakes in the regions round about, as they should be manifested unto my servant Joseph from time to time. So a real the mission is saying to the saints, come here. There's going to be an important building built in far west. Not only that, we're going to have so many members that we're going to need stakes. And this is an important point to mention, because saints pour into the region. And this exacerbates the problem 50-fold. Essentially, if you can imagine, Clive, they're in Jackson County. They're kicked out of Jackson County. They go to Clay County. The Clay County people are pretty happy with them at the start, but then there's too many. They get rid of them out of Clay County. They make Caldwell County. And they think, okay, well, let's just give them this parcel of land, and that's where they can live. Similar to what they did with the Native Americans. We'll just keep kicking you out, and we'll give you this land. And then when we build up to that, we'll kick you out of that, we'll move you somewhere else. And we hope that you'll just stay in this square that we build you. Same happened with the saints. We're going to put you in this area. But so many of them then moved there, it became too much. But this revelation is saying, there's going to be enough of you here that we're going to need a stake, or many stakes. So this revelation doesn't help, as I mentioned, with the locals who are starting to get very, very antsy with how many saints are loving the idea that they're getting their own county because they can be free from molest. They can live as kind of one, as a Zion kind of nation.
And it's in verse 116 where we talk about this Adam-ondi-Ahman. So, and you were saying they were sort of sent to that area, and this is the area you've been, but this is always ordained by the Lord, because this is Adam-ondi-Ahman. So, obviously, far west isn't exactly Adam-ondi-Ahman. 25 miles north of that is a place called Spring Hill, which talks about 116, which is Adam-ondi-Ahman. So it's like, the place was always prepared for them. And obviously, we'll talk about how the history all goes a bit downhill and they all get kicked out. But, it's like they've been prepared. Everything they've done, they've been building and building and moving to the next part and moving to the next part till they finally get to this point here. And Adam-ondi-Ahman, rich history, full of history with, obviously, Adam. It talks about at the very end here that Daniel, again, we talk about Daniel the prophet, spoke to him. He spoke about the Ancient of Days, which is Adam. So 3 years before Adam died, he gathered all of his children together and he blessed them all. And he did that at Adam-ondi-Ahman. And I guess I'm not going to get too into the Adam and Eve story now, but when they were kicked out of the garden, they lived in different places, but the main place where they resided was in Adam-ondi-Ahman. It was this place where they could still see and overlook where they'd been from, but that they could raise their children and teach them about everything. So it's very, very important for us and for the history of the world, really, but we're the only ones that know the true history of it.
I think this is the history of the church in this decade. They go through times where things are really awesome, and they go through times where they're really tough. Lots of prominent church members had been excommunicated by this stage, and surely that weighed on the prophet's mind. But yeah, I would agree that when he comes here, there's a small victory. I wanted to talk about that, Clive. So Adam-ondi-Ahman, I've got here this great publication of the Joseph Smith Papers, and I've gone to the date. I've gone to Joseph's journal, and I've gone to that date. And so they were walking around so this is on the 19th, which is the same day that Section 116 is recorded. So 19th, the Saturday. The next morning, we struck our tents and marched cross Grand River at the mouth of Honey Creek at a place called Nelson's Ferry, Grand River. It's a large, beautiful, deep, and rapid stream and will undoubtedly admit of steamboats and other watercraft navigation. So they go on and go on. So they walk until we see Colonel Lyman Waits, who lives at the foot of Tower Hill, a name appropriated by President Smith in consequence of the remains of an old Nephitish altar. Joseph sees this altar. He says it's a Nephitish altar. He doesn't talk about it anymore after that. But he says a Nephitish altar, and he names the place Tower Hill. So he's trying to lay claim. Like I said, he's going to places, and remember, the state is saying, if you commit to a parcel of land, you can just have it. We'll just give it to you. You have to commit to improve on it, and you can pay for it later. And so the saints, including Joseph, is going out trying to prospect this land. And this is what I wanted to talk to you about, Clive, because I discovered something that I didn't know. Which was called Spring Hill, a name appropriated by the brethren present, but afterwards named by the mouth of the Lord, and was called Adam-ondi-Ahman, because, said he, the place is where Adam shall come to visit his people, or the Ancient of Days shall sit as spoken by Daniel the prophet. Now, a journal entry then, Clive, happens the next day. Sunday was spent principally at Adam-ondi-Ahman, but at the close of the day we struck our tents and traveled north. Nothing else is said about Adam-ondi-Ahman. And so I wanted to look at this closer, and what I found is, I'm trying to make sure my notes and my thoughts are correct. But in 1835, when Joseph has some questions and answers, I'm going to make sure it's 1835 because I want to make sure I don't get that wrong. Because 1832 is striking at my brain. So I'm going to just check this.
Is it section 77? Because that's 1832.
There is a letter that is recorded where there's questions and answers. And I'll bring this up here. Actually, I'll share my screen again. That kind of worked before, so let's do that again. Question: what is the name of God as taught in first language? The answer: Amen. What is the meaning of the word Amen? Answer: it is the being who made all things in this place, I think that says. What is the name of the Son of God? The answer: Son Amen. And so Amen is the name of God, which I didn't know. So when we have that song Adam-ondi-Ahman, we're actually reciting God's true name in the most peaceable Adamic language. I'm going to assume you knew that already. I definitely didn't.
Yeah, that's right. So God is the one that calls it Adam-ondi-Ahman, and we don't know the exact interpretation, but we think the closest interpretation is Adam in the presence of God. So Adam, ondi in the presence of, and then Ahman, God. So that's what we think it might be. Yeah, but I mean, there is a few theories as well, but I like that one the best. Adam in the presence of God.
Well, I think it kind of struck me that whenever we say Adam-ondi-Ahman, we're speaking according to our religion, according to our history, we're speaking the Adamic language, calling God his most true name that we know of, or certainly his name in that language. And I think that is a very unknown thing. I mean, I think I know some things about our church history, and I don't think it struck me as much as studying for this episode and just having that penny drop in my mind that when we say that, we're speaking in that way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. God's name is Amen. You know, I had one guy actually tell me that that's why we say Amen at the end of the prayer, but I don't know if that's true. But it is an interesting thought.
I noticed, because I've Clive some spelling differences as well. Ahman is in our Doctrine and Covenants, and this Joseph's journal, who certainly wasn't written by him, but his journal is Awman, and this 1832 document that I just shared is Awman as well. So I tried to check if that mattered, and perhaps they're just spelling differences. maybe there's something more, but hey, there's zero reason to speculate on such a trivial thing. Um, interesting, interesting to me at least.
I've got a lot about Oliver Granger.
Okay.
So if you want to talk about before Oliver Granger, definitely want to do that. But I think Oliver Granger is such an important person, and I've studied a lot over the years about him. So let's get into whatever you want to get into first.
Well, look, I guess at this time, there is a lot of challenging things happening historically. And maybe what we should do, Clive, is come back for a part 2 to really talk about the history of what's going on at the time. Because there is so much. During this time, Sidney Rigdon gives a speech where he says that, basically, if they want war, we'll give them war.
Okay. All right. So all of it was right, when I was on my mission, some guy said to me, do you know who Oliver Granger is? And I said, no. And he said, that's why your church isn't true.
Because you don't know. The whole church isn't true because Clive Byram doesn't know Oliver Granger. You had a point where you could represent. If you'd have just said yes, he would have gone, oh, your whole church is true,
Yeah.
Clive. I'm so glad.
Gather around, family. The church is true.
Hello, everyone. This guy knows Oliver Granger. That means the church is true.
But he pulled out this really old Doctrine and Covenants, and he read this to me, all right? Section 117, verse 12. And again I say unto you, I remember my servant Oliver Granger. Behold, verily I say unto him, that his name should be had in sacred remembrance from generation to generation, forever and ever, saith the Lord. And his point was, he's not remembered, no one knows who he is, so therefore the Lord isn't telling the truth, and if the Lord isn't telling the truth, who is always perfect, then therefore our church isn't true.
Right. Makes sense.
So that really forced me into studying who Oliver Granger was.
Okay.
And I just want to make the point that Oliver Granger, even though I never knew who he was, the church isn't true. Isn't not true. The church is 100% true. It is remembered in the Doctrine and Covenants forever. It's written down there. That is what is important. It's written there. Just because we don't know who he is, that doesn't mean anything. It's written in the Doctrine and Covenants. So therefore, it will be remembered forever and ever. So let's talk about who Oliver Granger was, right? So we talked last week how the church was in major debt. Okay, the church was in debt. They tried to start the bank. That failed. And there's a lot of issues with church members. When money is involved, I feel like a lot of people that's when they go, I'm struggling, the Lord isn't helping me. There was a lot of issues. So the church had many outstanding debts in Kirtland, and Joseph and others had to flee mob violence and financial chaos. So they left Kirtland. Now, the Oliver Granger and a few others, they were asked to stay behind and settle the debts and maintain the reputation of the church, I guess you could say. The church hasn't just gone, we've lost all this money and therefore we're running away. Obviously, this was a courageous thing for Oliver Granger to say, yes, I will stay back. I will stay back, face this mob, face our debtors, and sort it all out. So I want to read this here in verse 13, right? This is what the Lord said. This is halfway through verse 13 about Oliver Granger. For his sacrifice shall be more sacred unto me than his increase, saith the Lord. The fact that he was able to sort out the debtors, that's not what the Lord said here. The Lord is saying that his willingness to sacrifice and stay back after the saints moved, this is what's more important to me. He dealt with the creditors. He constantly communicated with Joseph Smith about the progress of the church. No matter what the situation was, he continued to bear witness of the prophet. At no point did he say, we're struggling and Joseph Smith got us in this debt. He never ended up joined in the church in Nauvoo or Missouri. He literally gave his service and his life, because he ended up dying only in 1841 or something. He gave all the rest of his life into making sure that the church was set, that everything they owed was set. So much so that even Gordon B. Hinckley in October 1991 gave this quote about Oliver Granger. He said, Oliver Granger was not a great leader in the church. He was not a mighty preacher. He did not do anything that would cause men to build monuments in his honor. But the Lord said, his name shall be had in sacred remembrance from generation to generation, forever and ever. It is not the extent of our calling that matters, but our integrity and our faithfulness in whatever our position may be. So, yes, I'm sorry, I didn't know who Oliver Granger was at the time, but the fact that this man, even though not everyone knows who he is, he was willing to stay back no matter what it took and to make sure the church was organized and set, even if that meant never reaching the promised land. So that's why it's so important to know about Oliver Granger.
That's an excellent, so just a couple of hidden verses in there, but with such detail. And you said that was from Gordon B. Hinckley as well. So certainly remembered from those with keen eyes, keen interest.
Yeah, exactly. And his name is always in the Doctrine and Covenants, so even if a generation skips him, another generation will always remember. He's always been there and always been written down for us to know. Never left the church, always lived his life through the church. He joined in 1832 and just stayed on.
Wow. Clive, a couple of things from here. We get an introduction to a couple of other characters. Wherefore, verily, sorry, this is verse 1. Thus saith the Lord unto my servant William Marks, and also my servant Newell K. Whitney, let them settle up their businesses speedily and journey from the land of Kirtland. For I, the Lord, shall again send the snows upon the earth. Let them awake and arise and come forth and not tarry, for I, the Lord, command it. Therefore, if they tarry, it shall not be well with them. So speedily move. By this stage, there's basically no church members left in Kirtland. The Lord says, use the properties for debt. So use the properties in, the church will be able to utilize those sacred funds. And he says here, interestingly, Clive, in verse 6, for I have not the fowls of heaven, for have I not the fowls of the heaven, and also the fish of the sea, and the beasts of the mountains? Have I not made the earth? Do I not hold the destinies of all the armies of the nations on the earth? Like the Lord is saying here, he continues to tell these saints, I can hold so much within these hands. Can you just listen to me? Look at all the bad things going on. I need you to help to bring to pass this work. Couple of other things. Is there not room enough on the mountain of Adam-ondi-Ahman and on the plains of Aloha Shinha, on the land where Adam dwelt, that you shall covet that which is but the drop, and neglect the more weighty matters? Therefore, come up hither unto the land of my people, even Zion. Talks about William Marks again. William Marks is a trustee of Joseph Smith. In fact, for a period of time, the Nauvoo Temple was transferred into William Marks's name to avoid the local authorities being able to seize the land from Joseph. So William Marks has a big history in our church, possibly a bit similar to Oliver Granger in terms of quite well, not very well known. Clive, if we go into 19, we talk about tithing now. 119, we talk about tithing. We talk also, one thing that I skipped is we now here, let them, so this is in verse 5 of 118, which I've highlighted. Let them take leave of my saints in the city of Far West on the 26th day of April next, the building spot of my house, saith the Lord. Let my servant John Taylor, John E. Page, Wilford Woodruff, and Willard Richards be appointed to fill the places of those who have fallen and officially notified of their appointment. These brethren are now called into the apostleship of the church. And this is from those I said at the start. There was a lot of excommunications, disfellowships that occurred after the Kirtland Safety Society went belly up.
I just want to mention before that that the Lord promised, like as you said, he's asked of John Taylor and John E. Page, but the promise came beforehand. The promise is this. He says in verse 3, let the residue continue to preach from that hour, and if they will do this in all lowliness of heart, in meekness and humility and long-suffering, I, the Lord, give unto them a promise that I will provide for their families, and an effectual door shall be opened for them from henceforth. So, yes, the Lord, sometimes it feels like the Lord's asking a lot of us, but the Lord says, you do this and I will bless your family. This is what my promise is to you. It's like you read in 117 verse 6, where it's like, I can do all of these things. Don't say, how's the Lord going to bless us? We're running out of money. The Lord says, well, I can control the mountains and the destinies of the earth. And he's saying, you go out and I promise I will bless your families. I'm asking you to do these things. I'll take care of the rest.
Clive, this is, and maybe we'll end on this and we'll come back for a part 2, but this is where, as well, John Taylor is called, right? He's Canadian. And Parley P. Pratt is the one that I think converts John Taylor. And Parley P. Pratt is now saying to John Taylor that he's fallen out with Joseph Smith. And this is where John Taylor says to Parley P. Pratt, 6 months ago, you told me of the divinity of Joseph Smith. And now you're telling me it's not. Well, you told me back then and I believed you. And I still believe back then, I still believe that of you now. And, he says that you need to turn back to Joseph Smith. So really important, lots of history going on. And a very few strange sections in this week's Come Follow Me before we go and move to Liberty Jail. Joseph Smith, at the end of 1838, is captured. He's essentially betrayed, but he's captured. But I think we should come back and talk about that in a bit of a historical episode, perhaps, of what's going on in 1838. Maybe we'll come back for a part 2.
Yeah, because there's a big gap between 120 and 121. And like I said at the top of this episode, we do have a special guest with us next week talking about 121 to 124, I think it is.
Yeah.
So, but so it will be good to talk about that middle bit and what happened in between.
What's the connection? All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of You Could Hide to Cola podcast. Catch us on Facebook and YouTube, Instagram. We appreciate you joining us on this Come Follow Me journey. And we're pretty close. We're almost at the end now of Doctrine and Covenants. So, yeah, we'll keep moving through and continue to grow our knowledge. We'll see you guys for a part 2 soon.